7:32 p.m. Hello, Tracy. Could we get a roll call, please?
Okay. Director Boyd,
Here.
Director Decker,
Here.
Director Harvey,
Here.
Director Lohman,
Director Lohman
Director
is not
Slater,
present.
Director Slater Carter.
Present.
Director Lohman is not present at this time.
All right, thank you. Well, let's see. For President's statement tonight, I'm just going to make it a regular thing to thank the community for being water conscious and conserving. We are in a tremendous drought in the West, and Montera and Moss Beach are no exception. Our district is in very good shape, all things considered, especially compared to some of our neighbors, but we will all do well to conserve and develop the habits that do what it takes to protect our water supplies. So our community has always really stood tall when push comes to shove on the water supply, and it's a pleasure to work for you to try to keep this system productive and useful for our community. Let me mention a little later, we'll mention again, we have a bit of a, it's a public meeting, which is a bit about how public office here works. It's coming up in what we're calling our first, what's our specific name for it? It's like Citizens Academy? Or,
yes.
And that's coming up, I apologize, I don't have the date in front of me. Could you?
July 28th.
July.
Thank you, Catherine. Yes.
So coming up July 28th, and if you
6 p.m.
6 p.m. Thank you. If you're in the audience and you're interested in potentially stepping up to serve the community through this kind of venue, or if you know someone who might be, we really encourage you or the people you know to attend. It's the first of at least a couple of these, and those of us who've been doing this for a while, we really value what public service is and means to the community. A lot of people share with us how they feel about that as well. But we would really like to see even more people step into this. And so we want to put some information out there to help inform and perhaps encourage people to do just that.
And maybe just a brief corrections here. So we call it actually the Elected Community Service Academy, and it is scheduled for July 28th at 6:30 p.m.
Oh, 6:30.
Okay, well, thank you. We do have mailings going out, and we have information on our website. And if push comes to shove and you just forget, but you really want to figure something out, just give us a call at the district office. We really hope to see quite a few people there online, of course. So with that, let's get on with the agenda. Do we have any oral comments for items other than those on the agenda? I'm not seeing any hands raised. Let's go then to the consent agenda. Does any board member wish to pull an item for consideration? If not, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, please?
I'll make that
So
motion.
moved. Oh, I'll second Peter's motion.
Thank you,
Okay, so
Catherine.
Peter moves, Catherine seconds. All right, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Okay. Director Boyd,
Aye.
Director Decker,
Aye.
Director Harvey,
Aye.
Director Slater Carter.
Yes.
Okay, the consent agenda is approved 4-0. We have no old business items tonight. We have 2 new business items. Let's start with number 1, discussion of effects of drought on sewer operation, treatment, and collection system management challenges.
Yeah, thank you very much, Scott. This item was requested by Director Slater Carter. And I think it's actually an excellent question, because when we think about drought, we usually think about our water side. It's much easier to understand that a drought impacts our water supply side, but it does have some severe impacts to the sewer side as well. I would actually like Pippin, who looked at this, our sewer engineer, to make the presentation. But before, I wanted to thank Sam's staff for helping us address some questions and also for being present. So I'm certain there's going to be a little bit of discussion ensuing, and I'm glad we have the treatment experts of our local treatment plant available to answer questions tonight. With that, Pippin, maybe you can explain to us what the effects are, drought effects on our sewer collection system, as well as the sewage treatment system.
Thank you, Clemens. I was just thought I lost your screen there for a second. So, but you're back, so I can see you guys. So as Clemens pointed out, the first thing we think about with drought is water. We can't use as much. We can't wash our cars. It's going to affect our gardens. And, I guess in the worst case, people would have to bring in water or buy water. That would be in a catastrophic case. Again, that's always thinking about the supply side. The sewer side, people kind of just assume out of sight, out of mind, and don't really think about how the system works. And I'm glad to see Keishan here and Sam plants to really help complete this story and answer questions. But the sewer system is designed to work on hydraulics, where we use water and the water washes and dilutes our waste and it carries it away. And all the minimum designs of our sewer criteria have been designed over the years, if you look back, for using 150 or even 250 gallons a day. And all the pipes and everything's kind of optimized for that.
That's, Pippin, is that per person or per household?
Per household. Thank you. Yeah, per household.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so everything's is optimized in a sense to operate with that type of hydraulics. The trouble is several things happen when we lower the flows in our system. So we ask people to conserve for obvious reasons. And for years now, we've been as an industry, I think for, I forget the exact year, but for a number of years, there's laws in California requiring houses to have low flow fixtures. When you sell a house, you have to make these improvements or remodel. And low flow fixtures, like for example, an old toilet used to flush 5 gallons, then 3 gallons, then 2 gallons. Now we're down to like 1.2 gallons or even 0.9 gallons per flush on the most efficient toilets. So that's on average a quarter of the water that we used to put down the toilet to wash the solids. And what happens then, if you don't have enough water moving through the system, the water kind of spreads out and leaves the solids, leaves the papers, leaves the worst of all, or some of the food waste like grease and Swiffers and sanitary wipes. Those particular products are really difficult because they don't dissolve in the water. They're designed to be very strong. They say they're flushable, they fit down the toilet, but when they get in the pipes, they're very tough, they're elastic and really strong, and they hang up on everything. And if you don't have enough water to dilute it and keep it flushing down, those items collect together, they pile up, they get all twisted up and tangled. And it really, even if the pipe was in perfect condition, those pipes that were designed with slopes to handle that higher hydraulic movement doesn't have that energy pushing those solids along anymore. So we have a real scientific word for that. It's called the whoosh factor. And we say it in joke, but it's really true. If you don't have the whoosh factor, it doesn't flow down the pipe. So some houses on hills don't see the problems quite as much, but when it gets out into the flat areas, and on all the coastal communities, you can ask Half Moon Bay or Granada or anywhere, they're having all these problems. So additionally, we have other things to worry about. We're having less rain, and less rain, all the growth around our environment is looking for water. Not just the trees, although that's a major factor, but grasses and plants. Some of those plants most of those plants have roots at least as deep as they are tall, sometimes much deeper. Even grasses can look down 3 or 4, 5 feet looking for water. So they find the old sewer systems and they find little cracks. And in times of drought, those roots kind of attack the sewer system. And we're seeing much increasing root penetrations into the sewers during drought times. So all these things lead to extra effort for the cleaning crew, longer times to clean out the system, more effort to cut these tree roots if they do get in on some of the older pipes, and more damage to the pipes. Also, the slower flow takes, with less mixing to mix up those organic solids, leads to a concentration of the biochemical oxygen demand. And that has repercussions in the pipe system, in the pumping system, and ultimately the treatment plant. So in the pipe system, as the sewer gets more concentrated and flows more slowly, it becomes more stale or stinky. You know, you have calls sometimes for people walking saying, oh, it smells like rotten eggs on the corner of such and such. And that's as the sewer gets really old and those organic materials, some problematic organic materials or food waste people put down the garbage disposal rather than composting. It starts to break down in the sewer system, and it starts out with simple decomposition, and then quickly becomes what we call septic. And as it becomes septic, it forms sulfuric acid, and you get hydrogen sulfide gases, which is the rotten egg smell. And the bacteria that's associated with that corrodes the inside of the pipes, corrodes the pumps, and it causes a very strong sewage, really. I mean, it really makes it much more difficult, more concentrated. And as it gets down to the treatment plant, it can really affect the bugs and the processes in the treatment plant. So that all through the system, from the very beginning, from people's laterals, all the way down to the discharge, the drought has implications that make it more difficult to transport, process, and treat the sewage. So that's pretty much the summary. There's I'd be happy to take specific questions. I think the biggest thing I draw from this is understanding how it affects our budget. It's more time in the field, it's more difficult equipment on the equipment, and more difficult cleaning efforts, and it makes equipment, treatment equipment and pipes and pumps wear out more quickly. And all of those things have negative impacts on our budget. Sometimes, shortening the life by half or twice as many man hours to get a job done, and that at the end of the year can be a big impact that is hard to plan for.
And I think we also have to mention that our sewer service charge is based, at least to the most, on flows. So a great portion of our sewer service charge is based on flows. If those diminish, again, it's understandable on the water side how we see less revenue through less water sales. The same applies to the sewer side. So if we see less flows, we'll get less income through sewer service charges and have less money available, yet need to spend more on maintenance. Thank you, Pippin. I think we're going to get it back to Scott. You're on mute, Scott.
I see Catherine has her hand raised.
Oh, yeah, this is, thank you, Pippin. I'm glad I asked for this. I got so many questions. I think I'll say, I remember previous droughts and so many people said, how come we're using less water and our rates are going up? And this helped explain why our sewer rates also need to compensate for drought, because the costs go up. And so my first question is, does CASA have any recommendations for the California Association of Sewer Agencies? Have any recommendations for either individuals or districts?
Gosh, well, I mean, the first thing we really focus on industry-wide are encouraging people. There's, you know, three main things that we encourage people to not put down their sewer system. And that's food waste and grease. Food waste and grease is difficult to treat. You have to, you know, to strain it out, but when it dissolves into the sewer system, it puts a lot more work on the bacteria that need to break down and remove all the nitrogens and everything out of the sewage, so it's safe to dump into the ocean. And grease, of course, has a likelihood to collect in the pipes when it cools down and form clumps, and the grease tends to stick to the next thing we don't want you to put in the sewer system, and that's sanitary wipes or baby wipes. Those are, you know, they coil together like snakes and tie up, and are very, very difficult to deal with. And so, you know, we really encourage people to you know, not put things down the sewer system or flush things down the toilet that aren't absolutely necessary. That's one of the first things we can do. Second thing is at least for sewer flows on the private property, it's the low flows tend to cause more backups on the private property, and Montero has been kind of at the cutting edge, leading a lot of districts in the state by repairing and replacing all of or portions of the private lateral during the capital projects. So that's a way to help manage the problems that start right at the beginning, where the private laterals aren't working as well because of the low flow toilets. So it's a problem that the whole industry is dealing with. And, you know, better pipe materials, plastic pipe instead of clay flows a little better. We have to reconsider our designs to move solids better, where, you know, we might need steeper grades than we used to before, because we always assumed a minimum slope could carry the solids along, but now that's not always the case if you don't have the water to push it. So it affects our designs, and that's really, you know, but as a general process, you know, I think education is really important, and that's something that Montero is good at, with a tight community and a good newsletter. But I think districts all across the state are dealing with these challenges.
Good. Well, you answered one of my questions, and that was if we need to rethink our 1/4 inch to the foot minimum slope on flat lots and new construction.
We've already done that. We've already done that for laterals some years ago. So we're requesting a little steeper pipes on those designs. And in the streets, you know, we have bigger pipes, so they're much flatter than a 1/4 inch per foot. But again, we're having to revisit those on a case-by-case basis.
And that leads me to my second question, which is, I'm wondering if something this board doesn't want to consider with Clemens and Keishan and the effect on our budget, and that is increased pipe cleaning for some of our older, flatter pipes to protect the district from these kinds of problems. I would love to see in our upcoming newsletter and maybe just we're sending out it may be ways to get information out with other agencies about our new garbage system, which is going to have which are, we could say, you know, don't flush your wipes and put them in the trash and use your green waste for your kitchen waste. And start advertising that that's coming and that people don't need to use their garbage disposals because the state law has changed on green waste. But I know we just, Sam just approved the contract with Montera for the collection system, but I'm wondering if we don't want to take advantage of all the record keeping Sam has done and maybe put in some contingency cleaning as necessary. So that's it for me for now.
All right, I see Greg has his hand raised, and then Keishan.
So the only thing that could make that presentation better is if it were on slides or in writing. So Pippin, do you have notes that you could forward us? I mean, I'd be happy to turn it into a slideshow, but I mean, that really's got to be in a newsletter. That's really important information.
I mean, we could elaborate on that. Don't you think, Clemens? That, you know, it's the essence of that is in the staff report that we put up here in its skeleton. It's not as, you know, it's quite as thorough. We could add some more specifics and turn it into slides. But the staff report kind of summarizes those efforts. And to your point, Catherine, you know, I think you make a good point about working with Keishan and his team. They've been really good this year, pointing out concerns. They also do schedule at the district's request to use PSI for some of the larger pipelines. And we've also been using the district capital improvement contractor to clean some of the lines as well. And the benefit there is that because they have a TV equipment with their cleaning process, we're able to follow up behind and do some inspections as we go. So it has been a pretty broad team effort this year, and I know the guys are putting in efforts to do those pipelines thoroughly. So.
Let me.
So, I mean, I thought the sulfuric acid and septic presentation was particularly compelling. You know, if we could have something on that. But the other thing I wanted to point out to the district, and you've heard me say this before in years past, I think it seems obvious that the sewer charges are going to have to move away from volumetric and into asset-based, infrastructure-based, just like the, what is it called, water system reliability charge, which is asset-based. I'm not suggesting 100% fixed charges like Hillsborough, but I mean, I think you can see everybody agrees the problem is the infrastructure is fixed regardless of the amount of usage. So I hope the district is going to consider that in its next sewer rate study. Thank you.
So to Greg, to your comment, I will note that Pippin's presentation is or will soon be available on YouTube. So recorded in perfect fidelity from his presentation.
Thank you, Scott.
All right, Catherine, your hand is still up. But,
Sorry.
I can't. I saw.
I did have one more comment, but I forgot it already. So when I think of it, I'll put my hand back up.
Let's go to Keishan then. Keishan, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just wanted to give a little clarification to Director Slater-Carter's comment on the contingency. I wanted to clarify that the way our contract is for the collections with all the member agencies is that we do 50% of the lines, and then the balance of the time is when we sit with the member agencies and address any other contingencies, any other special requirements during the course of the year. So we do have the time set aside, and we will definitely take care of it. Now, coming to the next one, I wanted to just briefly touch upon Pippin's talk on the effects of drought. Every aspect what he has indicated, we at SAM have experienced due to the drought. Number one, he mentioned about rags and stuff like that, which don't get pushed because of low flow and they get stuck. Yes, we've had several problems of deragging, get stuck at pumps at the pump stations, lift stations, and there's tremendous amount of manpower costs involved in that. We have installed chopper pumps at certain places, but it takes care of to a certain extent. And the second instance, what he mentioned was about odor. And we do have odor problems at Portola pump station. There's been a constant complaint there. And all that is because of low flow. Flow gets septic there. And then because of the H2S, and then start smelling from the manhole out there. And lastly, what he talked about, what I would like to talk about is about the low flow, the influence of it, the plant process itself. We've been experiencing process upsets since last October for various reasons. There's a lot of problems of BOD or septic loading, and we've had low nutrient loading, and we've actually experiencing that where there is filament growth in our in the aeration basins, and that is detrimental to the process. So just wanted to mention it that we've really experienced each one of them, what Pippin has mentioned at SAM, and we are taking appropriate steps and measures to take care of it. Thank you.
Kishan, why don't you talk about your inspection too? Because that was the one that just happened, which was ended on a good note.
Yes, but I do not have a formal inspection, so I was waiting for a formal inspection note. This was just verbal. So I would wait for the formal to make that formal announcement
okay.
once we get it in writing.
But did they find any outstanding problems?
They did mention that the process looks better and we've taken proactive steps and it's working well. They were happy about it.
Yes.
I have a follow-up question to the bacteria filament. Are they affected by temperature changes? Is this something that you see more throughout the summertime? Does that play a factor with the filamentous bacteria in this process? Or is this mainly a BOD issue?
I don't know. Tim, is it possible for you to elaborate a little more on that?
Yeah, the specific type of filament that we've been seeing lately, as of late, is due to septicity, likely from the collection system. So there's a high probability that what's going on is we're basically growing this type of filament out in the collection system. And by the time it gets to the treatment facility, it's really a bugger to get rid of. The other type of filament that we've seen in the past, more of a Nicardia type filament, we could usually take care of with chlorine addition in the RAS line, and it would sort of break that down, and by putting polymers in the aeration basin to get it into solution, and we could waste it out. But this particular one that we've been up against, primarily due to septicity, and the lab reports that we've gotten have specifically said that the likelihood of it coming from the collection system is high. Does that help?
Yeah, it does help. So it sounds like, I mean, it's the detention time of the sewage in the system. And I think I'm drawing a little bit of relationship also to the longer the pipe, the longer the detention time.
Correct.
True.
Okay, thank you.
So does that cover what we wanted to cover on this topic?
Well, I wanted to add, it appears, and please correct me if I'm off base, but some of the solutions that people have to, for instance, using gray water for their garden, makes drought even more problematic for the sewer plant and the whole sewer system. And so I because I've been reading on Nextdoor about people asking about gray water systems and so on. And so it's a conundrum to me how you handle taking care of your garden. And at the same time, we've got to figure out how to keep the sewer plant at optimum operations. That's tough.
Yeah,
I look forward to hearing more.
I think Pippin touched on it, but I just want to say flatly, you know, we use really old technology and some kind of quickly becoming outdated assumptions about what's the best way to deal with our sewage. And as water becomes more and more precious, it starts to look a little more and more odd that we're using potable drinking water to deal with our wastewater or with our waste. And the water in wastewater, much of it comes from our drinking water sources. So it's an interesting situation we find ourselves in, and with what's going on with drought, we're right in that squeeze where we get to figure out, all right, well, we're going to change some of these assumptions, and that may lead to changes in some of the ways that we approach the problem. In the meantime, while we figure it out, we're going to be squeezed on keeping things working and keeping things paid for. And it's something, you know, we're all in it together. We all face the same problems, and that's why we're here. But I'm really grateful to have folks like Tim and Keishan and Pippin in the mix on this, dealing with the problems as they crop up. Okay, are we ready for the next item then?
Thank you. Thank you guys for coming.
I wanted to just make a brief announcement. We actually, Keishan offered to repeat a presentation that he made to the SAM board on Monday night. So we go into the next item and deal with the next new business item. Then we can go back to the SAM report and ask Keishan to maybe share with us what he shared on Monday with the SAM board, which is an update on the new flow retention basin that was put into the Portola property from GCSD. Yeah, is that right? Yes, Portola. Yes. Okay, so is it okay if I just dive into the next new business item discussion of effect? Excuse me.
Yeah.
That is the.
Let's go to the next item. Item 2, review and possible action concerning adoption of appropriations limit for fiscal year 2021-2022.
Okay, thank you, Scott. So this is a standard item that we have to prepare. This is the California State Constitution. Asked that we prepare essentially the GAN appropriations limit, and the appropriations limit essentially looks at how much tax base we get, how much tax funds we get, and ensures that we don't appropriate more on new construction. So the appropriation limit for the prior fiscal year was at roughly $2.4 million. And what goes in here is actually the change in population in San Mateo County, specifically for our area, that's 0.75%. And also the change in income per capita in our area, that was in the past year 5.73%. And so these factors provide an appropriations limit for the new fiscal year. And so for the next fiscal year, essentially our appropriation limit is $2.6 million. So this is ultimately the maximum amount of tax proceeds the district is able to spend in the fiscal year. And we show in our worksheet that we are $1.2 million below our GAN limit, or below the GAN limit. So we have to document this and ask to adopt a resolution of the Montero Water and Sanitary District determining the 21-22 appropriation limit.
All right, do we have any comments from members of the public? Do we have any discussion from the board? Can I have a motion to approve the resolution next in order, resolution of the Montero Water and Sanitary District determining the 2021-22 appropriation limit?
So moved.
A second.
Okay, I believe that was Catherine and Jim, was it?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Tracy, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Okay. Director Boyd,
Aye.
Director Decker,
Aye.
Director Harvey,
Aye.
Director Slater Carter.
Yes.
Okay, the resolution is approved by a vote of 4-0. All right, Clemens, let me give it back to you to give it back to Keishan.
Well, and
All right.
hopefully Greg will report on the Midcoast Community Council.
We have the rest of the agenda, but we're going to just cycle back and pick this
Yep.
up before we go to the rest of it.
Yes, so Keishan, if you would, so I understand we're in the SAM report, and we can hear from Catherine later on more items from Monday's meeting. But if you are ready to share the screen and present the item that you did on Monday night, please do so.
Sure. Thank you very much, Clemens. And let me see. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Yeah. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to present this. This was actually presented to the SAM board on Monday, like what Clemens indicated. So just repeating the same presentation. And we're talking about the wet weather facility expansion project, which SAM completed recently. The underground project, which is the wet weather project itself, was in phase 1. It was constructed in 2012, and the phase 2, which was completed recently in June 2021. Both are of equal capacity, and each one of them are 200,000 gallons. Primarily, these are concrete chambers on the Burnham Strip, and the manholes you see here, MHF and MHG, are the manholes that the facility gets connected to. And both of these are located on Obispo Road. Now this project, I would like to say that this phase 2 project actually came up as enhanced compliance action requirement by the Regional Water Quality Control Board, for which this is similar to a supplementary, we had a penalty to pay for certain spills, and therefore Regional Water Quality Control Board wanted us to identify certain projects by which they could probably reduce the fine. So therefore this project was suggested, and we were able to get about 300,000 credit for less of the fines for construction of this particular project. We were required to complete this project by June 30, 21, and we were required to submit a final report, which we achieved and did it. So the wet weather storage expansion facility was actually built by a team of consultants, contractors, engineers. Just to name some of them, the land surveying was done by Quiet River, and they did the survey and also wrote the easement which was required for the GCSD. The environmental consultant was WRA Incorporated. Geotechnical was done by BAG engineers. Construction and project management was done by Tanner Pacific. The design and engineering was done by SRT consultants. The original design for phase 1 was also done by SRT consultants. The general contractor for this project was Bay Pacific. And incidentally, Bay Pacific was the same contractor who's actually laid the entire pipeline in the Montara area in the 70s, 80s, the Montara force main. He's also responsible for the Princeton force main and the Granada force main. So the entire thing is what he had done almost 30, 40 years back. And he was able to, he was the most qualified bidder, he was the apparent lowest bidder. And therefore, he took up this job of installing the wet weather storage facility. And of course, the entire STAM staff from each and every department also contributed to this wet weather storage expansion facility, right from administration, wherein they were involved in putting out the advertisement, the finance part of it, where the finance officer ensured that we have adequate funds and paid all the vendors. We had collections, maintenance, and operations who were doing day-to-day monitoring of the projects and ensuring that everything is in place. And not to forget our dear friend Tim Costello, who did an excellent job in posting all pictures in the Nextdoor and keeping the public updated about the day-to-day operations of the wet weather storage facility. So what was the purpose of the wet weather storage facility? It is to reduce potential for any wet weather sanitary sewer overflows, which could be due to capacity exceedances at the Portola pump station. And by means of this wet weather storage facility, we have enough time to perform preventive maintenance on pumps, air release valves, surge tanks, or any of these ancillary units. It also allows us to hold a portion of the peak daily flow and release it to collection system when plant influent flows are low, which means primarily equalization. This would ensure a steady flow to the plant, and that will benefit the biological treatment process since the bacteria will not be starved at night. And we actually utilized this about 3 weeks back when we had this process upset problems due to the filaments. So what we did was we shut off Portola in the morning and then for the entire day, and then we restarted it so that we could literally have a steady flow coming into the plant. So we've done that more than once, but recently we did it in the past 3 weeks. We had to shut it down on a continuous basis for almost 10 to 15 days during the daytime. Okay, so this is basically the wet weather operation in plan view. So you see when there are storm events, the flow exceeds the capacity at Portola pump station, wet well, and therefore this will back up into the local sanitary sewer system and fill up both wet weather facilities at the same time. Concurrently, it fills up phase 1 as well as phase 2. You see the arrow where it's actually filling up. Now, when the storm subsides, as Portola pumps keeps pumping out of the wet well, both the wet weather facilities will drain by gravity at the same time. You'll have a better explanation in the next few slides. Now, this is the wet weather facilities in profile view. The sanitary sewer manholes and pipes are in the foreground, and the wet weather chambers are in the background. You see these in the background here. These are the wet weather storage facility phase 1 and phase 2. So when Portola wet well surcharges, flow backs into the sanitary sewer system and eventually reaches the inlets to the wet weather chambers at manhole G and F. So as the flow keeps coming, water level on the wet well and sewer manholes and pipes will keep rising. You see this rise here, that's how it starts rising here. Eventually, flow will be over the invert of these inlet pipes to the wet well, to the wet weather chambers, and then start filling up these facilities simultaneously. So once the incoming flow slows down and the pumps can catch up with the influent flow rate, the water level in the wet weather facilities will drop. And as the pump keeps pumping, both wet weather facilities drain by gravity. Eventually, both wet weather facilities as well as the sewer manholes and pipes will be completely drained, and pump station return back to its normal operations. The entire thing gets drained, goes back here, and gets into a normal operation mode. So that's how the wet weather facility operates. Earlier we had phase one, which was 200,000 gallons, and now we have 400,000 gallons. And earlier, on a typical dry weather with just 200,000 gallons, we were able to shut it off, completely shut off Portola as well as the Montara facility, that is the Walker tank, and we were able to hold the entire sewer for about 12 to 16 hours. And now we can really double it, almost 24 to 30 hours on a typical dry day. Of course, on wet days, it'll be far less. So just to give you a brief about the construction process, the site was prepared in January, February 2021, and then the chamber assembling, you see this going on, that was in February, March 2021. These are just various chambers. You had 5 chambers, so each one of them getting installed. This is inside one of the chambers, and you see the chambers here almost complete except for doing the compaction, backfilling. The chamber assembly is completed. We had to do the hydrostatic testing of the chambers. Each one of the chambers were hydrostatic tested. Then we began backfilling of the chambers in May 2021. Then we had to install a new 24-inch manhole on Obispo Road, and this is the picture which was done in May 2021. Backfill and compaction testing done. You see these manholes here. Then we had to do the surface restoration on Obispo Road because of the manhole that we had installed. And finally, we did the hydro seeding, and the project completed in June 2021. So just to give you an idea about the cost, the construction and engineering costs, when we did the phase one, the construction was done in 2012, and the total construction cost was $601,377, which averaged out to about $3 per gallon. And now in 2021, literally 9 years down the line, we had the construction cost of $1,350,650, works out to approximately $6.75 per gallon. This is purely construction costs. That's the way it has escalated. The soft cost, of course, is $95,000. So the total construction cost in 2021 was around, let me reverse back. The board actually approved a total project cost of $1.5 million, which included a construction cost of $1.35, and the balance $150,000 was for soft costs. And I'm proud to say that we were able to complete the project within budget. With the approved $1.5 million, we were able to come to almost $1.45. And we did it well before time. Well before June 30th, 2021, we submitted the final report well before time. So this was an excellent project, excellent teamwork, and everything went off well. The county had given us a lot of compliance requirements because of the CDP, the Coastal Development Permit, and we were able to comply with each one of them. And the county was coming for regular inspection at several points of time. And believe it or not, we were able to comply with each and every item. And we had to take special permission from the county because grading is normally not permitted in the month from October to April. And as a special case, we took the special permit, and we did all this within the time frame. That's all, and I'm here to answer questions. We have our engineering team also, Tim Monahan from SRT, and of course my colleague Tim Costello, and we will be able to answer any questions. So I will stop sharing. If you guys have any other questions, I can always come back to these slides.
Okay, let me start with Clemens, and then after Clemens, we'll go to Greg.
Yeah, thank you, Kishan. If you could just put back up the last slide. There's something that jumps out at me because the wet weather phase one that we constructed in 2012, I recall the discussion very vividly about the sizing of the pipe array in 2012. And everything was considered between 200,000 gallons, 400,000 gallons, and 600,000 gallons. I think the the longest and most favorable consideration was a 400,000 gallon, so a single array of 400,000 gallons at the time. Now we have 400,000 that is essentially in two separate arrays, and the construction would have been, I understand, a little bit simpler if you would just put one large array in, as we strongly considered in 2012. However, the wet weather phase 1 was only paid for by Montera and Granada. So the city of Half Moon Bay opted out to pay for this project. They did not contribute a single dime of the $601,000 and $377,000. And that was the reason why that whole project was downsized. Now, I recall that it was rather cheap, would have been rather cheap to put 400,000 gallons in 2012. And my question to you or Tim Costello, or better, maybe even Tim Monahan, who really looked at the funds back then and at the money, how much more would it have been to install a 400,000 gallon tank in 2012 to get to essentially what we call right now phase 2 in 2012 already? I hope I was clear enough in my question.
Yes, you were clear. I'm sure Tim Monahan will be able to answer this question, but before I hand it over to him, I'm not sure if it would have been much easier if we had done 400,000 gallons at that point of time. Definitely, we would have probably still done the modular thing because of the logistics of transportation and all that. We might have done in 2 modules, but yeah, definitely it would have worked out cheaper. But in terms of logistics, handling, I'm not sure whether we would have been able to do 400,000 of just one chamber, one complete chamber. But then I'll let the engineer, the design engineer who designed this project answer this question. Tim Monahan, maybe you can add.
Yeah, sure thing, Kishan. Yes, Clemens, obviously there's with the time value of money, it would have been less expensive to build the entire facility up to 400,000 gallons in the initial case. As Kishan said, it was roughly $600,000 to build the first 200,000 gallons of capacity. If we assume, even if it was double that cost, it still would have been less than what we paid in the 1.3 million for the current project. And that only got us an additional 200,000. So to answer your question as roughly as I can, I'd have to look into the numbers closer, but in today's dollars, the vaults themselves cost about $400,000. And assuming that the contractor back in 2012 has already mobilized and he has equipment there, I don't think it would be double the cost, but I'd say maybe, a third more expensive than it was. So I'm thinking we may have been able to build the $400,000 capacity back in 2012 for 1/3 more the price, or around $800,000, maybe $900,000. I hope that answers.
Yes. Thank you. That's the number that I recall as well.
All right, Greg.
I just want to comment, and I'm sure you're all on top of this, that what Kishan put down in describing the operational benefits here is another argument of the benefit of the IPS to Half Moon Bay. And it's something that I expect to be writing up, because some of you are aware Half Moon Bay provided a reply to the NCC's letter that I felt was not factual and deserves to be replied to. So if I have permission, I might interview Kishan to make sure that I can transcribe the operational benefits completely in a subsequent article. But I think it's all good news that it helps that much. And I'm sure you're all, as board members, aware of the implications, which I believe are favorable for the lawsuit. Thanks.
Let me mention that since our very first retention basin, the one that's located in Montera, SAM crew has had the benefit of having some additional operating capability in terms of doing holdbacks and managing the flow. And with every step here, one of the strong intentions has been to give the crew more to work with to protect the environment and operate the system well. I too remember, as Clemens and the rest of us who've been on the board a while, when we did the first phase, the intention was not to do it in phases, but to bring everybody along and to do it all at once, and to do what was actually recommended in a peer review of there'd been a large project recommended by an engineering firm. We sent that out for peer review to several engineering firms. They came back with a report, and doing additional retention, or doing retention basins, was a primary way that they recommended doing the most efficacious thing for the least money. And that's where the Montera facility came from. That's where the first El Granado facility came from. And it came as a disappointment that Half Moon Bay opted out, because had they not opted out of the work in El Granado, we could have done everything in phase 1 and phase 2 a long time ago, given ourselves and the crew a much better safety operating margin, and done it at probably half the overall cost. When you take what we spent the first time and the second time, with Tim's comments about what it might have cost the first time, even with the time value of money, it looks like by refusing to participate, Half Moon Bay delayed the benefit of having a system that can be operated to give them more operational flexibility to flow into the plant during times of high flow. So it's very unfortunate, but I'm going to take the silver lining approach and be grateful to Keisha and Tim and Pippin and everyone else who's had anything to do with getting us to this point, because we now have some excellent facilities. And I'm really grateful that the community was kept so well informed this time. And Tim, that was pretty darn innovative. It looked like it was fun. You got a lot of interest on Nextdoor with your postings. And I thought it was just terrific. And Sam has always done good work, and it's really good to get some public awareness of it. So I'm just going to be grateful at this point. There is the dark history. There is some of the, as Greg pointed out, the going forward tussling, shall we call it, between us and our litigious neighbor to the south. But for the moment, let's celebrate, and congratulations on a job well done. Do we have any other comments on this? Catherine?
Thank you. Looking forward, and for Greg and Michelle for the article, I want to reiterate that Scott said having the Walker tank as a holding tank, which was the first stage of this addition to the operational efficiency of the SAM plant, is an important thing to pay attention to, because that was done, what year was that done, guys? 2001, 2002. Took us quite a while then to be able to get the first phase of the Burnham Strip done. And I want to note that Montera donated to SAM, or for SAM's use rather, not ownership, but for SAM's use, the Walker tank and the land it sits on in the Montera Water and Sanitary District. And Granada acquired the land on the Burnham Strip for these tanks and their own park, which could be built on top. And that was actually part of the concept in the design, was making these facilities so they were not a visual intrusion on the coastal views. But then I heard Keishan say that they were using the tanks, the Burnham strip tanks, to hold back flow for this BOD problem. And so one question came up, is that a way to help keep the larger pipes that go from Burnham strip into the plant flushed out, so that they don't suffer as many problems as from the drought? That's one question, and I'll let you answer that before I go to number 2. And whoever wants to jump in, please. Thanks, Tim. I saw you smile.
I will note, I was looking quickly through some old SAM agendas, and it was mentioned about the Walker tank back in 2001, talking about how it could likely be reused without much reconditioning. So we were busy on that probably in 2000, 2001, and for a little while beyond that.
So Tim, could it be used to help keep the gravity flow tank south of the Burnham strip in better shape with periodic flushing?
Is that Tim Me or Tim Monahan?
Either one.
I
You're
guess I
both
can-
really smart and know this stuff, so.
Well, the problem with using the tanks, I mean, ideally they were designed to be used during wet weather flow storage, when you're going to have more dissolved oxygen in the water, theoretically, because it's raining more, so things are going to be a lot more diluted. If you're using them like we were now, yes, it helps in regards to some of the issues, but it also doesn't help in some of the other ones by retaining the flow, especially during low flow periods. What you're doing is you're adding to the septicity in
Okay.
the wastewater that's already there. So while we did it because we had to, and we had to reduce the flow because that was the only way we could get the blankets to start to settle out, by having it there longer probably didn't help. If there was a way to aerate it or add oxygen, it would be handy. I see Pippin wants to pop in also.
Yeah, Pippin, why don't you jump in?
I can, and Tim Monahan, if you want to comment on this as well. I know you're in the same scope on this part of it, but to follow up on Tim Costello's point, the flow equalization is really helpful in that you can give the plant an even amount of water. In concept, if all 3 agencies had really good flow equalization, you could give a perfectly even amount of water all day and all night. But the trouble is, he also pointed out, is in order to do that, you have to take what's already a long retention time and hold it several more hours, because most people use their water, when they get up in the morning and then maybe get home, take showers, so a little more during cooking. It's called diurnal flow. So it peaks in the morning and then a little bit more in the daytime, but not as, a little more than at night, but not as much as morning. And then it peaks probably a little higher in the evening. And, it's helpful actually when people run their dishwasher after 9 o'clock. That's actually probably good for the sewer system. But, aeration, mechanical aeration is one thing that Tim mentioned. You could put pumping energy or aeration bubbles into the tank. You can also use chemical addition. You can either try to use chlorine to kill the bugs you don't want in advance of going to the plant, or you can use a proprietary product like bioxide. All of these things are ideas which we may have to look at SAM and further out in the collection system. But all of these things cost significant money. Not a little bit of money. They're significantly expensive compared to the gallons we're treating. So we need to look at these things carefully and talk about all the options over time. I am fully in favor of using flow equalization to stabilize the plant, not just in wet weather, but there are these other factors he's talking about, the septicity problem and the corrosion and the wrong bugs growing in advance of the treatment plant. These are all real problems that need to be thought out and carefully looked at, and probably Tim and SRT, might be able to look at some studies that would further that investigation if these problems continue in the future.
And my other question is, by which you guys have made even clearer for me, is it seems like being able to control the flows into the plant is an important operational and probably cost advantage for running the operations of the plant itself. And it seems to me, well, first of all, the initial peer review study called for 600,000 gallons, not 400,000 gallons of storage. And with climate change and change in storm patterns and so on, I am sorry we didn't take advantage of that on now the 2 times we've had to keep the costs down. Half Moon Bay, I know we brought up having 600,000 gallons at a SAM board meeting, and Half Moon Bay flat out refused to have that done. But it also seems to me that if you could control the flows in to the plant from Half Moon Bay, so you could shut off flows for doing some of the maintenance and repair and equipment upgrades and so on at the plant, and maybe even for storm flow management as well, that it might make sense to find a way for SAM to have a flow management wet weather facility that handles the flows from Half Moon Bay, because they come in, the Midcoast comes in one direction and the Half Moon Bay comes in the other direction, so they can't use both. But as the population has grown on the coast, it seems that it used to be that you could count on very reduced flows at some points in time, but as the population has grown, we don't have that luxury anymore, either for Half Moon Bay or for the Midcoast. And the plant may need to be moved, and it may need to be changed for future technology and climate change conditions. But in the meantime, we should be doing what we can that costs the least and makes it easier and most cost effective to operate the plant. And so any comments anyone has, I'd love to hear more.
Keishan?
Yeah, elaborating on Catherine's statement about holding flows, I just want to drive home the point that we're talking about the importance of holding flows coming from the north, and that is approximately 44% of the flow. The balance 56 approximately comes from Half Moon Bay coming from the south, and we have no means of holding those flows. So it's necessary that we have some sort of a wet weather storage expansion, even in the south side. That would help the plant to a large extent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to put a
Tim.
button, just to put
Sorry.
a button on it, the Walker tank was added to the system in 2002, and then the first wet weather facility in El Granado was in 2012, so 10 years later. And so we've now gone almost another 10 years before getting ourselves to the capacity that we really wanted to get in 2012. Who else had their hand up?
Tim had a question.
Monahan?
Yeah, thanks, Scott. I just want to elaborate on Catherine's comment about dry weather and how it's going to impact flow conditions. And as Pippin was explaining in great detail, how the deposition of solids is higher or greater with less water to transport the material down the pipeline. When we're using the wet weather storage facility, of course, the pumps will shut off and the interceptor, after it turns to gravity, will, essentially, not go dry, but will have no flow. Anything that's in there might settle out and settle in the bottom of the pipe. But when we resume pumping and we bring all that flow that's been stored up north back, that velocity, that material, that water coming down will resuspend that material and move it to the plant. So yes, we have problems with less water and higher concentrations of BOD coming into the plant due to people conserving water and less water in the system. But I don't think we'll be suffering any undue consequence from using the wet weather storage facility to manage flow more proactively going to the plant. That's just what I want to put my input on. If you have any questions, I can entertain them.
Did I see another hand? Jim.
Yeah, I just want to thank Kishan and Tim Costello and Tim Monahan and Pippin for this educational session. I didn't know there was good sewer and bad sewer. Sewer that's bad, that's septic, and I just want to thank you for this this brilliant presentation. It's been I didn't know this stuff, and it sounds like the north is doing more than its share of managing its flows and helping plant management. So in fact, it's doing the only share of managing flows. So I think that's an important issue. Thank you.
Oh, okay, so let's move into the rest of the regular Sewer Authority Mid-Coast Side report.
At the last meeting, we approved the operations contract with Half Moon Bay, which is different from the two or the collections contract, sorry, which is different from the contracts with Montera and Grenada, because Half Moon Bay also has a separate contractor who provides collection system work for Half Moon Bay, and it's actually their primary contract. In fact, I want to, Keishan and Tim are such reasonable public servants, servants, that they are even willing to listen, to allow the private company help instruct our more than qualified collections team and management. And my guess is there are sometimes conflicts in direction from what our guys would do compared to what the private company is instructing them. And again, it's compliments to our team that they haven't thrown up their hands and just gone, forget it, we don't need you. But so that was approved, and that's pretty much the exciting stuff. I will say the other exciting stuff is Half Moon Bay's flows are now approaching 60% of plant capacity for dry weather. So they their growth, and I would be very interested to know, to get a guess as to why this is happening. But the why is more out of curiosity, because from the perspective of Sam, it's simply how much of the dry weather capacity they are using. I will say they are using 60% of the capacity, but to Greg's point a little bit earlier about infrastructure, they're not paying a premium on the use of the equipment, which they are using more of the infrastructure than either Montera or Granada or Montera and Granada combined. I think it would be tough to find make any kind of change to the allocation of costs, particularly right now. But our allocation of costs is not based on the use of the equipment, but I don't believe, but more on the use of the chemicals and the electricity and that kind of thing. But again, it's the Half Moon Bay is at 58, 59%. And my guess is by the end of the year or two, they'll be up to 60% or more.
I'd like to request that our SAM members consider a couple of things. One, perhaps seeing if we can get some information or at least an informed theory about where this growth and flow is coming from. Specifically within to the other point in terms of being predictable about rates so we can keep rates stable and anticipate changes. If this were, for example, to be discovered to be some error that Half Moon Bay was able to correct, it could very quickly change the proportions that each of us pays to fund the operation at SAM. I don't want to get too comfortable with the notion that Half Moon Bay simply picks up a bigger proportion of this. If something were to change quickly because somebody found and fixed something, I think we would be well advised to be prepared for that, so we don't get to working with too many assumptions about this. If, on the other hand, it's about growth, then on the flip side, it would be interesting to get whatever we could in the way of a projection of how long does this continue, at what rate, and at what point might Half Moon Bay reach the limit of their allocation. So that, again, so we can try to anticipate and look to the future and be prepared well in advance. Greg.
To your point, Scott, I just wanted to raise the possibility, and I don't know, but it could be that they're not really growing so much as we're shrinking and they're not shrinking. For instance, if the breweries, which are a regular user, are on the Half Moon Bay sewer system, I don't expect their flows are going to reduce, but I don't know. You know, I'm just suggesting it might not be so much that they're growing as much we're decreasing, and so their percentage is going up. I don't know.
The Princeton breweries are in El Granada, are in Granada Community Services District.
Well, there can be a lot of theories, and it's worth giving due consideration to them. And that's what I'm asking, is that we figure out what we can know about this, and we anticipate what it might mean if the trend continues or if the trend reverses. In all my time on, here at Montera and time on SAM, things were relatively stable for a very long time, and the rate of change here is noticeable and unusual. And it's not good or bad, it's just something that we may want to understand. So if our SAM reps could start thinking about how SAM might approach this from a policy level, working with staff or making inquiries of Half Moon Bay. I mean, certainly, I would hope that Half Moon Bay has some theories about what's going on, because their costs are increasing and they're going to want to manage those costs. So perhaps working together, we might avoid some surprises one way or the other.
I'm wondering if that isn't something that would want to be discussed at a managers meeting, and maybe have Sam work with engineers on the member agency engineers on these questions?
I'm happy to
Yes.
bring it up.
Yep.
Absolutely.
All right, well, thank you. Do we have anything else on the SAM report? If not, let's go to Greg, Mid-Coast Community Council.
Just a few quick things. The Brown Act coming back, I think it was September 30th, and they're talking about not allowing complete Zoom meetings, has caused some concern on our part. I know several of us are going to write Senator Becker and Assemblyman Berman, I think it is, requesting that Zoom meetings be allowed to continue, and also that we be allowed to post some of our deliberations on the FCC website. But that's a separate issue that you guys don't have to deal with because you have staff. But the requirement right now apparently is if you're off site, you have to invite anybody who wants to come over to your house and join the meeting. And that's so 1976, you know, so we want to get rid of that. It hasn't been a council issue yet, although I hope to make it one, but I did speak at the Board of Supervisors meeting on Tuesday, and I asked for a moratorium on all connections, all water connections and all use of water. I think some of you are aware that the longest droughts in California history were over 120 and 200 years. We don't know how long this one is. And there's some other issues that are going to come out of this, which has to do with reserved water and how much water has to be reserved, and does reserve water have to be on the same per capita basis as the people who are conserving, or does it have to be on the old approach? On wildfire issues, many of you saw we did get a change to the county's tree permit process, allowing people to remove eucalyptus, and I think, but I don't want to say for sure, Monterey pine, without permits. They have to notify and comply with some minor conditions.
Also, Greg, bay trees and tan oak.
Thanks. It's a one-year change. It's going to be revisited and renewed. It's not everything I hope for, but I think the MCC and local citizens did make a difference in allowing that to happen. There's also been a change. RCD worked with the Coastal Commission to come up with sort of a public works approach, which I don't fully understand legally, but it's going to grease the skids when it comes to getting coastal development permits, or CDX's emergency coastal development permits for wildfire control fuel reduction works. I also tripped over an article. In fact, one of you may have sent it to me about watershed pollution from wildfires. And I don't know if you know that I got Steve Ritchie and was it Tim Ramirez of SFPUC involved in the local hazard mitigation plan with Ann Ludwig. And she's interested in this. This bears on the wildfire risk in the bypass where the eucalyptus stands are heading into the Caltrans bypass. So I'm hoping again to put this on the plate for getting some funding to do something about that property. And then finally, I think you might have seen that Half Moon Bay replied to the MCC letter on the lawsuit. I've got to admit that I lost my temper about halfway through reading it, so I'll have to read it calmly again. But I think it merits a reply. I think there's errors of fact. I welcome suggestions if any of you care to provide them before I or the council authors a follow-up letter. Barbara Dye did already provide some reminders of some stuff to me. So I think that's it for the MCC.
Barbara Dye's letter was from October of 2020.
Right, but she was reminding me of some relevant facts.
Exactly.
Greg, if I might ask about the tree removal policy, does it require replacement?
My understanding is it does not, but can I hedge on that and get back to you?
Yeah,
we've had multiple.
That'd be great.
We've had multiple testimony from professionals, both Cal Fire and biologists, but there is a disagreement of opinion. But the feeling is that leaving the chips does suppress the growth and allows natural vegetation to regrow. And right now, I should have mentioned this, there is a $500,000 project that's been tentatively approved for removing the eucalyptus and medians in El Granada. And the discussion we're having is not that we're not grateful, but that the cost was something like $10,000 a tree or some huge number. And so we're trying to see what we can do to save costs and get more trees removed. And one of the things is to leave the chips down and not have to replant. Okay, both of those would save cost, allow us to remove more eucalyptus. Okay, so that discussion is ongoing.
I've got a concern about not only carbon capture, but water retention and habitat. Because if you're going to remove these things which serve as habitat, replacement is usually a pretty good idea.
And the argument has been made also that the chips would help retain moisture in the soil if they were left in place, to your point.
Perhaps eucalyptus chips are really acidic, and you just try walking underneath a eucalyptus forest and say a cypress forest or redwood forest, and you'll see just incredibly big differences between what's in the vegetation below. But anyway,
So,
it's an interesting topic, and
you're advocating for replanting is what I'm hearing.
I'm advocating for a holistic environmental approach.
Okay.
I would not recommend one particular activity because ecosystems are complex. As we learned tonight, even with things like water and sewer systems, you mess with one and the other one speaks up. And next thing you know, we're having discussions about different kinds of filamentous growth. Look, we have both kinds. It's not just one bad kind of filamentous growth, it's both, or it's two. And one happens in our collection system and the other happens in our treatment plant. And it's you tamper with complex systems, you be ready to get some repercussions where you weren't exactly thinking. So if we're going to a wholesale vegetation removal, even for a good reason, I don't like the fire hazard that the eucalyptus present, but they do provide habitat. And there are some illusions about what they do to water that appear to come out of presumption rather than observed fact. So,
and Greg, Scott is correct. They are habitat for monarch butterflies.
It's true.
Well, actually, there's a dispute about that too. They're a habitat of opportunity, but not a natural habitat. And we've had biologists testify to the fact that if the removal is done over a period of time, the species will relocate. Of course, you have to be careful during nesting season and so forth. But the eucalyptus is not native vegetation. So, I mean, I've heard presentations to the effect that we don't have to preserve it for the monarch butterflies.
Once a species has developed dependence on it, whether we call it native or not, isn't going to make any difference to them. And all you have to do is visit the arches in Santa Cruz and you get the idea that this could be important. So tread lightly is my thought.
And
you had something?
Wait a minute, I saw Pippin raise his hand.
Okay, Pippin.
Just a quick question. Greg, and probably there's a glut of trees with people cutting trees all around the state now, but I recollect at some point that eucalyptus trees did have a resale value because they were prized for making high quality printer paper.
And furniture.
I hope that's true, but I haven't heard it.
Well,
I'll
Greg,
look into it.
You're a pretty stern watchdog, so perhaps keep an eye on the budget for this cutting activity and find out what the downstream money flow looks like.
Yeah, I just bought some outdoor furniture made in Vietnam from eucalyptus.
Okay, well, this is a lively topic, but let's move on. We don't have Rick here for the California Special Districts Association report or the local agency formation commission report. Do we have anything from any of the rest of us on those? No. Do we have Christine, any attorney's report? Oh, yes. I have something on this, and we have an urgency issue that I propose that we put on the closed session agenda. The justification I will give is two-part. One is that it came to our attention after the agenda was posted to the public. And two, on the advice of counsel, we should talk about this. And this would be in the category, I believe, of potential litigation, which I believe would be appropriate for us to mention for the purpose of the Brown Act. For us to do this, I make the motion that we do this. We'll need a second, and then we will need
Second,
okay, we have a motion and a second, and it would help a lot if everyone voted for this. Tracy, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Okay. Director Boyd,
Aye.
Director Decker,
Aye.
Director Harvey. Director Harvey, oh, Director Slater Carter.
of course.
Okay, so by a vote of 4-0, we will hear an extra item in closed session. Christine, do you have any attorney's report for us? You're on mute. No?
Oh, I want to go back. I have something to comment on, and that was at the SAM board meeting in open session, there was a discussion by Jeremy, our attorney, and he said that it's his opinion that many changes are going to be coming to the Brown Act in the near future because of the convenience and accuracy of recording of Zoom meetures. And so he said there was no point in Sam rushing into making future meeting structures a hot item in the near future, because in his opinion, there are going to be changes to the Brown Act. So stay tuned.
Good to know. Christine, was that a no, I don't have a report? Okay, it looks like you're not muted, but the volume is so far down we can't hear you. Okay, let's see, directors reports. Any directors want to say anything more? Okay, general manager's report.
Okay, now I'm unmuted. Maybe just one brief item. We are actually doing some work on our Portola 3 well. Unfortunately, it's taking a little longer than anticipated. So we're hoping to have it back in service next week. It's been out since 3 or 4 weeks. That's gonna be it. Thank you.
Okay, do we have anything to talk about for future agendas? If not, we're going to move into closed session where we have conference with legal counsel on existing litigation, one case, that's the city of Half Moon Bay suing its neighbors. Conference with legal counsel on anticipated litigation, 2 potential cases, and conference with legal counsel existing litigation. This is on the matter of MWSD versus Dow Chemical. And then conference with real property negotiators about 771 Rivera Road here in Montera. And let me note, since it's become a normal thing, Director Lohman will not be recusing tonight because Director Lohman is not present, so he will not need to not be present for that closed session. With that, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thank you especially to our colleagues and friends at SAM and Pippin and Tim Monahan. Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you again. And we're going to take a 5-minute recess and reconvene in closed session.
Thank you.
Good night,
Hi,
all.
guys. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.